I wanted to take a few minutes simply to explain how to read this chart. I think it's going to help you not just with the creative testing, but having a better understanding of how to leverage Facebook ads in the most efficient and profitable way for your brand. So let's dive straight into it. So first part is creative testing. Then we move on to audience testing. Then we move on to bid testing, and then we move on. One thing to note, this part is by far the most important one, because if you don't do the first one properly, none of these will help you to achieve profitability with your brand. So audience testing will give you a better audience for top of funnel, will give you like a small increment in profitability, let's say. However, it's not going to allow you to take that massive leap in performance, and it's not going to allow you to have a more scalable ad account. It's simply going to find you a more profitable pocket of your potential customer base, and that's pretty much it. And don't expect the audience to give you the biggest bang for your buck. So the creative testing is the most important part. So the goal is to find winning angles, concept SKUs, or creators. So I like to group each ad set with one of the four. Most often we test angles and concepts. On a new store that I'm working with, I also often start with SKUs, but more often than not, the client tells me, okay, these are our best-selling, products, and we have the highest margins here. We sell the most amount of these products, and that's why angles or concepts are usually a priority. So I would group a specific angle into one ad set or one campaign, depending on how structured you want to have your account, and then all the creatives inside of that ad set are meant to promote or test one angle, or all the ads are meant to test one creator or one SKU or one concept. And then each ad set has 5 to 6 creatives most often, and includes only one ad type. So this is my preferred way of testing when I have when I have enough of let's say testing budget. I would just test statics, or just test videos, or just test carousels in a single ad set, simply because you want the creative to make the difference and not the ad inventory type, if that makes sense. So certain ad inventory will always have more demand, less demand, depending on what you're selling, where and when. And you don't want to introduce that variable into your test. And then we decide whether or not the ad is hitting your NC-CAC. So NC-CAC tends to be my main KPI that I always optimize towards and make a decision based on whether or not we're hitting those KPIs. So if ad isn't hitting the NC-CAC, I would pause the ad. If it is hitting the NC-CAC, I would analyze soft and hard metrics, and this will be a small section on analyzing hard and soft metrics. And then I would take learnings from the iteration test and essentially come up with a new creative to script and test. Now, the ad set that's performing well and is hitting your NC-CAC, I would also test vertically, even though that's not the main purpose of the campaign, because we have a scaling campaign further down the line. So with these ad sets, the testing ad sets, I usually do a 10 to 20% bump the day after a day of good performance. Now, maybe we can touch on the analysis of hard and soft metrics. Of course, this ties to video ads, and static ads, but the soft metrics, apart from outbound CTR, are mostly for are just for video ads, because obviously a static can't have a hook or hold rate. Now, again, primary decision-making metric for me is new customer CAC. I recommend you have that as well, except if you aren't working towards if you're not a brand that is working towards having the monetization happen in the back end through LTV in the long run, which of course is not a great idea because it's very hard to compete and be profitable on the front end only. So that's why I usually recommend having NCCAC as the primary decision-making metric. So this is the decision-making part. So is the NCCAC below or above target? So recommended target set depending on your unit economics, CAC, unit economics and CAC to LTV ratio. So these are very important numbers that you have to have dialed in, on your Google Sheets. And it's not, you shouldn't take this for granted, but a usual recommendation is around 1 to 3. So let's say if your LTV is about, $300, you can afford to spend $100 per acquisition. If it's above, you're essentially taking profits from your future in a sense, and that's of course not a good situation. If it's below, you're profitable, and that's a good asset that you can scale. So you can calculate LTV probably in more than 2 ways, but I know of 2. So the basic calculation is average purchase value times average purchase frequency times customer lifespan. So these are numbers that you should be able to pull from your e-com platform. And then you can also calculate a gross profits based LTV, which only deducts COGS from average purchase value. This one, of course, is safer. It's going to end up being a lower number, but it's safer for you when making, plans for running ads. Then the secondary decision-making metric. So again, this one is the first one. So we left this one. So defining NCCAC depends on the attribution model that you're using. So you can either use first party, for example, your ad account attribution, or third party. The problem with ad account attribution is that you cannot add a column for new customer CAC. You have services that can help you do that, but just having the ad account, you can't do that. Or at least if you're not a very tech savvy person, you won't be able to do that. So you have to get a third party tracking software. In example, Triple Whale, Wicked Reports, Nordbeam, through ROAS. Honestly, I've tested out mostly the first two, so Triple Whale and Wicked Reports. I do not recommend Wicked Reports. It's a good tracking platform. It allows you to select the confidence level of view-through attribution, technical stuff like that. The big problem is with Wicked Reports that it has a attribution delay of 1 day, which is very risky if you're running high budget campaigns, because on the day that you're, for example, if I wanted to check today's performance, I won't be able to do it because it's not going to show it. So that's a bit of a problem. And Triple Whale, for example, is in real time. So for example, if you're scaling aggressively, you'll be able to check how much profitability you're making with your ads. And important, choose one model and stick with it across all channels. I say across all channels because some people, when they run, if you look a Google ad account or Facebook ad account, they don't have the same attribution model in most cases. So for example, Facebook usually reports on a 7-day, up to 7-day click model, whereas Google will report basically how you define it. And it also isn't using last click or first click. I think you still have the option to select it, but it's kind of they're kind of forcing the data-driven attribution model, which essentially calculates how much different touch points in a customer journey are responsible for a transaction. So you get like partial numbers. And then this is hard metrics, soft metrics. For example, it's not the same for all ad accounts, but I would kill an ad when it spent, let's say, 2 to 3x our new customer CAC, and it hasn't given us a conversion. If then I look, if that happens, then it's turned off. If after 2 to 3x has been spent on one ad, if it got a conversion or more than one, then we leave it running usually for about 3 to 5 days to see how it's performing. If one thing that I always try to observe as much as possible is the consistency. So consistency is a great sign that a creative will probably sustain spend at higher budgets as well. So I like to make I completely lost my train of thought right now. Oh yeah, consistency. So yeah, if it's consistent on smaller budgets, it's a higher likelihood from my observation that it's going to be consistent on a higher budget. So that's a good thing if it has some continuation there. If we have especially with higher AOV products that have a higher CAC, usually you have to kind of find middle ground because you don't want to like spend thousands of dollars in testing without seeing any conversions, and a higher CAC product, you have to have more cash to test anything pretty much. So that's a problem in the beginning. You also have higher AOV on the other hand, so you will essentially you can make a lot more money with that, but the problem is that you have to spend more to test. So soft metrics help you make a decision when you're not getting conversions yet, essentially. So I like to look at unique outbound click-through rate. I forgot. So above 2 is kind of a benchmark. Then hook rate above 30%. So that's hook rate is 3-second video plays divided by impressions times 100. And then hold rate above 25%, which is true play divided by 3-second video plays times 100. I think these calculations are right. Great. And these kind of help you, like I would say from my experience that ads that have very solid soft metrics tend to convert well as well. And ads that don't have good hook soft metrics are most likely going to struggle on the CAC. Of course, it's risky to make all decisions based on soft metrics, but these kind of help you when you cannot make decisions based on the CAC because you haven't gotten a sale yet, for example. And these are usually also useful for, let's say, you're running a new iteration test, testing, let's say, new hooks, and you can see that, for example, the hook rate is very strong, but then the hold rate isn't holding up, and that means that you need to work on your lead body of the video, for example, or the hook rate is bad, but the hold rate is good. Then you can work on improving your hooks, or you have certain hooks that work really well on different ads, and then you just test different angles for the lead body, etc. So yeah, you can play around with that, and I like to track all these metrics for each batch of creatives that we test. And okay, so this is I wanted to focus mostly on this part because this is the most important part, and then we have these 3 parts. If you do this one properly, then these 3 will be much easier. So audience testing, a goal is to find winning lookalike, interest, broad, or remarketing audience. Again, I would take a winning ad or winning batch of ads from, the initial phase and have one ad set testing one audience, if that makes sense. We always want to isolate the variables that we're testing and, not convoluting. Again, hitting NCCAC, not hitting NCCAC. If it's not hitting the NCCAC, then you can potentially, test another lookalike, another interest, another broad audience. When I say another broad audience, I mean like only males or only females. Not really recommended, but you then get, I honestly don't like to spend too much time here. Usually when an ad is converting well in this step, then it's, probably going to work well in this step as well. If it's not working well in this step, it's not going to work. So if it's hitting NCCAC, again, we can scale 10 to 20% daily after a good performance. And then we take the combination of winning creative, winning audience. We can test bids for it. So bid testing, I most often do manual bids. And you can, there are different ways how to approach it. I like to start with my average CPA. It most likely is not gonna spend, and then do increments of $5, wait for a day, or $10, wait for a day. Or up and down depending on how much, when you're testing bids, you essentially want to see what happens with spend and take note of, when it's spending, at what point it's spending, at what point it's not spending. And that's pretty much it. So if ad set is not spending, it's daily budget, we need to obviously increase our bids. If it's spending, then we might have a good bid testing campaign that we can scale. So you can take learnings from phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 and create, you can scale this ad set or campaign, or you can create a new campaign which would, have winning creatives, winning audience bids. How you want to group it, comes down to your approach, but what I usually do is if I'm testing with bids, then I would have a campaign that has, with the bid set that I know can get a decent amount of the daily set budget spent, ideally 100%, but it's always, 10% up down. So you want to have a bid when you're spending, and you want to stack as many winning post IDs in that campaign, whether it's an ABO or a CBO campaign, doesn't matter. And you can you can stack 5 to 6 winning creatives inside of that one. If you're not doing manual bids or cost caps, you can and if you're using, let's say, A plus has cost caps. I don't do cost caps that often, but I just started testing a few campaigns with that. But if you're running an A plus, I tend to stack more winning post IDs in a A plus campaign because I think it's designed a bit differently. The budget distribution works better in an A plus across all the ads than it does in a regular conversion campaign, at least from my experience. Although I don't know if that's true for a fact, because I also use A plus exclusively for scaling, so I don't like A plus for testing. So all the post IDs that I mature into the A plus campaign tend to have very good performance as this. So and have also been stress tested on a higher budget, which means that it's gonna most likely it's gonna spend well. And goal is to scale winning combinations of creative audiences bids. So this part is very simple and easy if you've done this part properly, and this part as well. So this is where you should spend 80 to 90% of your time is testing your creatives, focusing on testing as many new angles, concepts, SKUs, or creatives as possible, and taking learnings, having a good decision-making kind of framework to follow. This is mine. And, following this to make better decisions when you're running ads. So hope this is valuable. If you have any questions, simply reach out to me on Twitter or on marco@supergrow.io, and we can go from there. Thank you very much.